Let's go to Dubuque, Iowa. You're next.
Thank you. I graduated from college in 1970, and I'm currently a 40-year-old white male. And so my personal history kind of parallels the last 20 years. And I am currently in a confused state about how we would today define racism. And I would say that even sort of a philosophic inquiry as to 20 years ago you could easily define it in the conditions that existed in society. Today we're given statistics and esoteric abstract results. No one walks up to me and says I'm a racist, but people get on TV and politicians supporting programs say there are racists out there. How do we know one? And before you respond to that, I'd like to say that Dr. Williams is, I discovered his column 2 or 3 years ago, and he is one of my favorite writers, and I really enjoy his thought process. His analysis really helps me understand some very confusing issues nowadays when there's a lot of stuff thrown against the barn. He is amazing in his ability to clarify it. But if you could respond, how would y'all define racism today so I can know whether I should go put the bullet through my head and just give up, because I don't know anymore. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Professor Williams?
I don't know. I mean, anybody can be a racist. I mean, if you're for budget cuts, you could be a racist. If you're for a constitutional amendment to balance the budget, you can be a racist. If you're for accountability, if you're for you know, a lot of organizations, civil rights organizations, make you a racist if you're for many, Proposition 13 in California. This was called a racist act. So, I mean, as the caller said, I mean, it's far more complicated to be a racist today. That is, you just can't put on a hood over your head and walk down the street. I mean, it's far more complex.
Well, I think he's right. Many of modern-day racists have three-piece suits and work in institutions, and some of them manage those institutions. But I would think it's still possible to tell. There are several levels, of course. You have the obvious racists, and these are the people, of course, who've been involved in many of the acts of racially motivated violence. Easy to spot. So one of the centers in the South, the Center for Democratic Renewal, has discovered a pattern of move-in violence, where blacks are moving into some of the suburbs, and whites are responding with counter-violence. So that pattern of racially motivated violence is easy to tell when you get your feeling up and you're doing something because the other person is black or the minority. Much harder to tell, of course, is the product of institutional racism, and that's what we're talking about today. The result and the impact of unequal distribution of resources and opportunity on people's lives comes essentially out of institutions. And so I would say that if you're sitting there in an office and you're a manager, or if you're even a clerk, and you're helping to manage public policy that you know is going to have deleterious impact upon a black or a minority or other person, then I think that ipso facto, you are a part of the cog of institutional racism, and you could be considered racist. The problem today is that it's difficult to see such people, and they don't define themselves out loud. And that is one of the reasons why we say, well, we're not going hunting for racists. What we're going to do is look at these institutions and look at the result, and we're going to challenge the result.
I'd also add that a new characteristic, if you want to call it, is surely racism, is black racism in the country. You find a guy like Georgie Woods in Philadelphia, who's a civil rights activist and disc jockey. He says something, and I'm virtually quoting, he says about the Vietnamese and Koreans moving in black neighborhoods, they don't look like us, they don't act like us, and they shouldn't live with us. Or just in Washington, D.C., the minister of this, I believe, was Good Hope Baptist Church. He was introduced at a rally for the mayor of Washington, D.C., as the man who had to get the boat people straight. That is, there was an incident, and he was trying to get a Chinese merchant out of the neighborhood. Or in Philadelphia, 2 years ago, and it ran for about 3 years prior to that, black kids come out of movies and they collect in a gang, and they just beat up whites at random, the snatching pocketbooks and things like this, which the news media calls hooliganism, but it fits my book as racism. So I'm saying that we have to, if we're going to have any kind of credibility, any kind of sense of morality, we have to condemn black racism as well as white racism.
Well, we do, but at the same time we have to realize that the real racists have power. And we certainly can't equate black racism with white racism, because blacks
it's ugly anyway.
It's ugly, but but if you're an analyst, you still have to distinguish between that level of racism in the black community and the racists who are destroying people's lives every day.
Our next call is from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Go right ahead.
And Thomas.
Excuse me, caller, that was my mistake. Can you start over again? Go right ahead.
Okay. I've been reading, Mr. Williams, I've been reading your articles for a long time now, and Mr. Thomas Sowell, and you guys are brilliant. And I tell you, it's a joy to listen to you speak. I think the man next to you is something of a mental pygmy, because he's all wrapped up in this racism business. You know, I'm white, and my ancestors in this country came over as indentured servants. Didn't get paid anything either. They lived for a lifetime as slaves. There's a lot of white slaves in this, a lot of whites in this country that, and 50 years ago, I remember people talking about living on the other side of the track. Well, I'm one of the folks from the other side of the track. We were on welfare, and we know what it was like to be poor and everything. But my relatives, I don't ever hear them crying and complaining about how tough they had it.
Thank you, Carl.
Well,
let me just jump in and I
want to apologize. Yeah.
Okay, you start.
I mean, he's my fan, and so I'm going to apologize for him. I wouldn't call Professor Walters a mental pygmy, but I tend to, if we were to sit down and decide which people have been faced the most destruction, the most oppression in the world, I couldn't come up with a name. I mean, the Turks tried to exterminate the Armenians, the Nazis with the Jews, the Irish and the Catholic, the Huguenots. I mean, they persecuted people. I mean, it's nothing unique about blacks. I mean, and matter of fact, I think that blacks had it far easier than the Jews that went to ovens, or the Armenians that were put in mass graves. So if you went to look at history and decide who was persecuted the most, it's a useless battle.
Well,
and then if you came with the answer, so what?
This is incredible to me. I mean, what you just said is that you think that Jews who've been put in ovens had it far worse than blacks, which really tells me that you don't know anything at all about black history. What you don't understand is that there probably were 50 million black people who were taken out of Africa. Probably 25 million of those people never made it to these shores.
Yeah, died in passage, of course.
And the way that they died, you simply don't understand the horrendous nature of slavery. What you are trying to do is to equate one people's suffering with the other. I think what you've done really is to refute the point that you're making. I think the point that you were making was a good one, which is to say that black people are not the only people in the world that have suffered. That all kinds of people in the world have suffered.
Well, that's what I said.
So, no, what you then went on to do was to say that you think that one people's suffering is worse than another. And what I'm saying is that if you make that point, you've not only refuted yourself, but you don't know anything about
I'm saying it's a
black
debatable
slavery.
issue.
It's not debatable. The point is that black suffering is unique.